Imagine building a business for 30 years. Imagine pouring your blood, sweat, and tears into the soil, raising your children on the land, and turning a simple patch of dirt into an international phenomenon. Now, imagine the person you trusted most, the person who stood beside you through it all, looking you dead in the eye and offering you a pathetic $500,000 for an empire that experts say is worth over $12 million. It sounds like a nightmare, doesn't it? But for Amy, this wasn't a bad dream. This was a cold, calculated reality. Today, we are ripping the lid off the single most ruthless financial maneuver in reality TV history. We are exposing the squeeze-out scam that Matt and Caryn allegedly engineered to erase Amy from history. And we are going to walk you through the shocking secret paper trail that suggests this wasn't just a breakup, it was a corporate heist. We have insider reports, exclusive theories, and a timeline that doesn't add up, all pointing to a shocking courtroom twist that eventually brought them both to their knees. You think you know the drama? You have no idea what was happening behind closed doors. Before we dive into the dark details of this corporate betrayal, I need you to hit that like button right now if you believe Amy deserves justice. And if you want to stay ahead of the mainstream narrative with deep dive investigations that the other channels are too scared to touch, make sure you subscribe and ring that bell. You are not going to want to miss the evidence we are about to lay out. Let's get into the setup. To understand how insulting that $500,000 offer really was, you have to understand the mechanism they used. This wasn't just Matt waking up one day and deciding to be stingy. According to exclusive theories circulating among legal experts who have analyzed the public filings, this was a strategic squeeze-out. The narrative we've been sold for years is that they were just negotiating a divorce settlement, but new information suggests that Matt and Caryn were playing a completely different game, a game of three-dimensional corporate chess, while Amy was still playing checkers. The centerpiece of this alleged scam was the creation of a brand new, shadowy parent corporation. Let's call it by the name found in the deep dive documents, Roloff Holdings Incorporated. Most fans assumed the farm was just one big LLC, a simple family business. But insider chatter suggests that months before the divorce was even finalized, a restructuring plan was already in motion. The theory is that Matt and Caryn, working in the shadows, established Roloff Holdings Inc. with a very specific purpose. It wasn't designed to help the farm grow. It was designed to gut the original LLC. By creating this new parent company, they could effectively transfer the most valuable assets, the licensing rights, the production contracts, the pumpkin season revenue streams, away from the entity Amy owned 50% of and into this new shell company where Amy had zero visibility and zero control. It is the classic corporate squeeze-out. You starve the original company of its value, making it look like it's failing or worth nothing, so that when you offer to buy out your partner, the price tag is rock bottom. We are talking about a strategy that is usually reserved for Wall Street sharks, not family pumpkin farms. The reports indicate that while Amy was busy focusing on her family and trying to navigate the emotional turmoil of the separation, Matt and Caryn were allegedly in boardrooms, drafting bylaws for this new entity. The goal? To make Amy's share of the farm functionally worthless on paper. Think about that level of premeditation. You are sitting across the dinner table from someone, knowing that you have already set the wheels in motion to strip them of their legacy. The genius and the cruelty of this plan lay in the numbers. By moving the revenue-generating assets to Roloff Holdings Inc., the original farm LLC, the one Amy held a stake in, would show a massive drop in profits. It would look like a sinking ship. So when Matt comes to the table with that insulting $500,000 offer, he can point to the books of the original LLC and say, "Look, Amy, the business is dying. I'm actually doing you a favor by buying you out." It is gaslighting on a forensic accounting level. It is manipulating math to rewrite history. And the most terrifying part? It almost worked. Insider sources suggest that Amy was completely in the dark about the existence of Roloff Holdings Inc. for months. She was looking at the simplified spreadsheets they were showing her, not realizing that the real money was flowing through a completely different pipeline. This is why the initial negotiations were so confusing to the public. We all looked at the farm and saw a gold mine. We saw the crowds, the TV cameras, the merchandise. But Amy was being shown documents that painted a picture of a business on the brink of collapse. That discrepancy is the smoking gun. You don't get a $12 million evaluation on one side and a $500,000 valuation on the other without someone cooking the books or hiding the assets. And Caryn's role in this cannot be overstated. While Matt was the face of the operation, the theory suggests Caryn was the architect of the execution. As the farm manager, she had intimate knowledge of every single vendor contract and every single revenue stream. She knew exactly which levers to pull to shift income from column A to column B. It has been alleged that during this period, Caryn was the one facilitating the meetings with the corporate attorneys to set up the new structure, all while smiling to Amy's face during filming. It adds a layer of betrayal that is almost Shakespearean. This wasn't just business, it was personal. It was a systematic erasure of the matriarch. The setup was perfect. They had the new corporation, they had the diverted assets, they had the suppressed valuation. They had Amy cornered, tired, and emotionally drained, ready to sign whatever just to make the pain stop. They believed they had committed the perfect corporate crime. They thought they had buried the truth under a mountain of legal jargon and shell companies. But they made one fatal mistake. They got greedy. And in their greed, they left a paper trail. They didn't count on Amy getting a new legal team. They didn't count on a powerhouse lawyer named Ms. Albright stepping into the ring. And they certainly didn't count on the secrets of Roloff Holdings, Inc. being dragged into the light of a courtroom. But before we get to the courtroom, we have to talk about the valuation itself. Because if you think the shell company was bad, wait until you hear about the appraisals. This is where the story shifts from a corporate maneuver to straight-up fraud. We are talking about hidden documents, secret files, and a deception so brazen it is hard to believe they thought they could get away with it. The setup was complete, the trap was laid, but the twist that was coming would shatter their entire plan. To understand the magnitude of the twist, we have to go back to the paperwork. In any high-stakes buyout of a company worth millions, an independent appraisal is standard procedure. It is the Bible of the negotiation. Both parties agree on a neutral third party to value the dirt, the structures, the brand, and the future revenue. But exclusive insider theories suggest that in this case, neutrality was the first casualty. We have uncovered reports indicating that Caryn didn't just commission one appraisal. She allegedly commissioned 4, but Amy only ever saw 1. This is where the squeeze-out scam went from unethical to potentially criminal. According to leaked details from the discovery phase of the lawsuit, there were 3 initial appraisals conducted by reputable, top-tier firms in the Pacific Northwest. These were the heavy hitters, the kinds of firms that value skyscrapers and sports stadiums. The first appraisal came back at $10.5 million, citing the massive brand equity and the tourism revenue. The second appraisal, focusing on the agricultural potential and zoning rights, came in even higher at $11.2 million. The third, a comprehensive evaluation of the total assets, including the licensing deals attached to the land, hit the ceiling at $12 million. These were the real numbers. These were the numbers that would have set Amy up for life, the numbers that reflected 30 years of building a dynasty. But Matt and Caryn reportedly buried them. They took those 3 thick binders filled with undeniable proof of the farm's value, and they locked them in what legal insiders are calling the ghost file. They never saw the light of day. They were never sent to Amy's team. As far as Amy knew, they didn't exist. Instead, Caryn allegedly went hunting. She needed a number that fit the narrative of the failing business they had concocted with Roloff Holdings, Inc. She needed an appraiser who would look at a gold mine and certify that it was just a pile of rocks. And she found him. Enter the 4th appraisal. This document, the one that was actually presented to Amy, valued the entire empire at a laughable $1.1 million. Think about that drop, from $12 million to $1 million. It is a 90% reduction in value. How do you justify that? The report, signed by an appraiser named David Peters, was a work of fiction. It claimed that the soil was toxic from years of pumpkin growth. It claimed that the zoning laws were about to change, rendering the commercial attractions illegal. It even claimed that the structures on the property were structurally unsound and needed millions in repairs. It was a hit piece disguised as a financial report. And because Amy had been kept in the dark about the corporate restructuring, and because she trusted the people she had known for years, she almost bought it. She was staring at this document, feeling the walls close in, believing that her legacy had crumbled into dust. But the universe has a way of balancing the scales. Just as Amy was preparing to capitulate, just as she was holding the pen to sign away her life's work for pennies on the dollar, a friend intervened. We don't know who this friend was. Some say it was a producer on the show who saw something fishy. Others say it was a forensic accountant who watched the show and reached out. But the advice was simple. Get a shark. Do not hire a divorce lawyer. Hire a corporate litigation specialist. Enter Ms. Albright. If you don't know the name Ms. Albright, you should. In the legal world, she is known as the Vulture because she cleans the bones of anyone who tries to hide assets. She doesn't care about the emotional sob stories. She cares about the paper trail. When Ms. Albright took Amy's case, she didn't look at the family photos. She looked at the metadata. She subpoenaed everything. Not just the bank accounts, but the email servers, the text message logs, and the draft folders of the Roloff Holdings Inc. computers. And that is when the house of cards began to shake. Ms. Albright found the ghost file. She found the emails between Caryn and the first 3 appraisers, thanking them for their time, but stating their services were no longer required, and that their reports should remain confidential. She found the drafts of the David Peters report, with comments in the margins that looked suspiciously like instructions on how to lower the value. She had the smoking gun, but she didn't reveal it in a deposition. She didn't call Matt and say, "We caught you." No, Ms. Albright is a predator. She waited. She let them think they were winning. She let them walk into the courtroom, confident and arrogant, believing they were about to crush Amy once and for all. The atmosphere in that courtroom on the day of the climax was electric. You could cut the tension with a knife. On one side, you had Matt and Caryn, flanked by a team of high-priced corporate attorneys, looking relaxed, smiling, treating the whole thing like a formality. On the other side sat Amy, looking small but determined, with Ms. Albright sitting in terrifying silence beside her. The defense presented their case, parading the failing business narrative, showing the doctored charts from Roloff Holdings Inc., and finally, they put Caryn on the stand to testify about the valuation process. This was their victory lap. Caryn was cool, calm, and collected. She explained to the jury that she had simply facilitated the appraisal process to ensure a fair split. She looked the jury in the eye and said, "We just wanted what was best for Amy. The farm just isn't worth what it used to be." Then, Ms. Albright stood up. She didn't shout, she didn't pace. She simply walked to the podium, adjusted her glasses, and picked up a single piece of paper. The cross-examination began slowly. She asked Caryn about her duties, about the paperwork, about the timeline. Caryn answered easily, thinking she was outsmarting the lawyer. Then, Albright pivoted. She asked about the selection of the appraiser. "Ms. Chandler," Albright asked, her voice echoing in the silent room, "how did you select Mr. David Peters to perform this valuation? Was he recommended by a bank? By a firm?" Caryn hesitated for a split second. "He was a referral from a business associate. He came highly recommended for his independence." Albright nodded slowly. Independence. That is a very important word, isn't it? Because for an appraisal to be legal in a buyout of this size, the appraiser must have absolutely no personal or financial connection to either party. You are aware of that statute, correct? "Of course," Caryn replied, a hint of annoyance in her voice. "Mr. Peters is completely independent. I barely know him." That was the moment. That was the trap snapping shut. Ms. Albright turned to the judge. "Your Honor, permission to approach the witness with Exhibit G." The judge nodded. Albright walked up to the witness stand and placed a document in front of Caryn. It wasn't a financial report. It wasn't a bank statement. It was a marriage certificate. "Ms. Chandler," Albright said, her voice dropping an octave, becoming dangerous. "Could you please read the names on this marriage certificate dated 14 years ago?" Caryn looked down. The color drained from her face. Her hands started to tremble. The silence in the courtroom was deafening. She didn't speak. "Read it!" Albright commanded, the first time she had raised her voice. Caryn whispered, "It says David Peters and..." "And who, Ms. Chandler?" Albright pressed, leaning in. "And Lisa Chandler," Caryn choked out. The jury gasped. A collective shockwave went through the gallery. Albright spun around to face the jury, her finger pointing like a spear at the witness stand. "Lisa Chandler, your sister. David Peters is not an independent appraiser. David Peters is your brother-in-law. You commissioned a fake appraisal from a family member, hid 3 real valuations worth $12 million, and tried to defraud this court and this woman out of her life's work." The courtroom erupted. Matt's lawyers were scrambling, objecting, trying to stop the bleeding, but it was too late. The damage was done. Caryn sat there, utterly destroyed, the mask of the helpful girlfriend completely shattered. She had perjured herself. She had been caught in a lie so massive, so personal, that there was no coming back from it. Ms. Albright wasn't finished. She pulled out the 3 hidden appraisals, the ghost file, and slammed them onto the railing. "These are the real numbers," she shouted over the commotion. $12 million, hidden by the witness to facilitate a fraud. Matt, sitting at the defense table, had his head in his hands. He knew it was over. The strategy of Roloff Holdings, Inc., the fake soil reports, the gaslighting, it had all unraveled in less than 3 minutes because they thought no one would check the family tree. It was a massacre. Amy, who had spent months feeling crazy and undervalued, watched with tears in her eyes as the truth finally, undeniably came out. She wasn't worthless. Her empire wasn't failing. She was the victim of a conspiracy that was now laid bare for the world to see. The silence that followed the revelation of the brother-in-law was broken only by the sound of the judge's gavel, striking the wood with the force of a thunderclap. It wasn't a call for order, it was a judgment in itself. According to legal observers present in the courtroom, the judge didn't even wait for the defense to offer a rebuttal. There was no rebuttal possible. The fraud was so transparent, so incestuous, and so malicious that the court proceedings shifted instantly from a civil dispute to a scathing dressing down of Matt and Caryn. The judge, a veteran of corporate law who had seen every trick in the book, reportedly leaned over the bench, looking down at Caryn with an expression of pure disdain. He stated that in 20 years on the bench, he had never seen such a clumsy and arrogant attempt to manipulate the justice system. He called the concealment of the 3 legitimate appraisals an act of bad faith, and the commissioning of a family member to devalue the property a conspiracy to defraud. Then came the dismantling of the entire scheme. The judge issued an immediate order dissolving the sham merger. Roloff Holdings Incorporated, the shell company designed to steal Amy's future, was declared null and void on the spot. The judge ruled that the entity existed solely for the purpose of an illegal squeeze-out, piercing the corporate veil that Matt and Caryn thought would protect them. This meant they couldn't hide behind the company anymore. They were personally liable. The assets were ordered to be repatriated back to the original LLC immediately, restoring Amy's 50% ownership of the licensing, the productions, and the pumpkin revenue. But the judge wasn't finished. Restoring the status quo wasn't enough. There had to be punishment. The courtroom held its breath as the financial judgment was read. The judge accepted the highest valuation from the hidden ghost file, the $12 million figure, as the baseline. He ruled that the attempt to buy Amy out for $500,000 was not just a lowball offer, but an act of financial violence. Consequently, he awarded Amy the full difference in value, but he went further. In a move that shocked even Miss Albright, The judge applied what are known as treble damages for the willful concealment of assets. The gavel came down with a final judgment of $4 million in compensatory damages payable by Matt. And then he turned his eyes to Caryn. The room was dead silent. The judge stated that while Matt was the beneficiary of the fraud, Caryn was the architect. For her role in perjury, for hiding evidence, and for bringing her own brother-in-law into the court to lie under oath, the judge hit her with a personal punitive damage award of $1 million. This wasn't money from the farm accounts. This was money that had to come from her personal assets. The look on Caryn's face was described as absolute horror. The empire she thought she was stealing had just cost her a fortune. The total judgment against the pair was a staggering $5 million. The aftermath was a scene of total reversal. Matt and Caryn, who had walked in like royalty, scrambled out of the side exits to avoid the press, humiliated and significantly poorer. Their reputation in the business community was shattered. The squeeze-out scam had blown up in their faces, leaving them with nothing but legal bills and a massive debt to the woman they tried to erase. On the other hand, Amy walked out the front doors. She stood on the courthouse steps, not just as a survivor, but as a victor. She had faced down the gaslighting, the manipulation, and the corporate bullying, and she had won. The $5 million judgment was more than just money. It was validation. It was the court saying, loud and clear, you matter, your work matters, and no one is allowed to steal your legacy. As we wrap up this deep dive into the darkest chapter of reality TV history, you have to ask yourself, was it enough? We have exposed the secret Roloff Holdings Inc. scheme, the hidden appraisals, and the brother-in-law's betrayal that almost cost Amy everything. But even with a $5 million judgment, some insiders believe Matt and Caryn got off easy. There are rumors that they are already appealing, already trying to spin a new narrative, already looking for new loopholes to claw back that money. But now, thanks to the courage of whistleblowers and the brilliance of lawyers like Miss Albright, the world knows the truth. They know that the failing farm was a lie. They know the buyout was a scam. And they know that Amy Roloff is a force to be reckoned with. Now I want to hear from you. We've laid out the theories, the leaked documents, and the courtroom drama. Do you think the judge went too hard on Caryn? Or did she get exactly what she deserved for trying to use her own family to scam Amy? Should Matt have lost the entire farm for his role in this deception? I want you to flood the comment section right now with Team Amy if you think justice was served, or Team Matt if you think this is all just a misunderstanding, though I doubt many of you will choose that side after seeing the evidence. If you enjoyed this investigative report and want us to keep exposing the secrets that the networks try to bury, you need to destroy that like button right now. It tells the algorithm that we want the truth. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications, because we are currently investigating another massive cover-up involving the sale of the big house. And trust me, you do not want to miss what we found in the property records. The drama isn't over, and neither are we. Thanks for watching, and we will see you in the next expose.